Hello everyone, we are on and we are back to another Hi Masterclass, this time for our August Masterclass, our Masterclass number 38. And we have our, as always, special guest, Pedro Oliveira with us, our front-end developer here at Hi Interactive. And today he is here to talk about more CSS tips. He has made a previous Masterclass about some CSS tips, and today we are bringing you more. And to talk about that, and before Pedro starts his presentation, let me just say, if you want to check Pedro's article, he wrote an article about this topic. You can check it, and you will have a full guide for this presentation. Okay, so before we start, please drop a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have plenty more masterclasses coming up for you on the next months. We don't tend to stop, and we will not stop producing this type of content. And yeah, hi Pedro, how are you?
How are you?
Ready to kick this presentation on?
I'm ready. Yes.
Let me just
let's
ask you. Yeah. Let me just ask you one thing before we start, and that thing is, what's the purpose of this masterclass? Why are we doing this today?
Okay. Well, the main reason we are doing this, and I hope I would love to do this kind of CSS tipping masterclasses, because and that actually has a lot to do with the first slide that I have here to show. So the idea, and I think it's quite useful, because actually or luckily CSS is growing a lot, and every month that passes by we have new features, we have new ways of doing something that until that point we are not able to do, or at least without using JavaScript. And we know that CSS is better than JavaScript. Okay, I mean, it's not comparable, I'm not saying that, but it's always better to do something just using CSS than using JavaScript. And in fact, that's it. That's why. Okay, because JavaScript is delivering, and the browsers are also delivering lots of support, and they are supporting a lot of new features. So I think it's important from time to time to do a quick refresh on things that are really useful from to our daily jobs in terms of front end, obviously. So and that's what we are going to focus here today. Most of the things that we are going to talk in the next minutes are features that are long time asked features by the front-end developers, and a couple of them at least will have a big impact, because they will help the developers using less JavaScript. Okay, and sometimes that is something that is good. Okay, but don't get me wrong, I love JavaScript. I think it's a pretty good language, but CSS is also fun, and it didn't need to depend on JavaScript from my perspective. So let's dive in. So we are going to talk a little bit about transitions, animations, how to change elements on the page. Okay, you are going to understand what these topics means, and we are going to talk about nesting on CSS, obviously. So let's start talking a little bit about transitions. So something that is a huge requirement, a need from a long time ago, from almost all developers went through this problem, that is animate something from the display none state to a display block state. And I mean, this should be something so easy to do, but it isn't. But now it is, actually. So let's say that we have a model, and this is just a snippet of the code for that model. And let's say that we have a class named model with the display none, which is the default state. And we will have a isOpen variation of the model representing the open state. So naturally, to do that, we would add the property display none and the property display block, and that is fine. It's going to work. Obviously, with some more CSS than we have here, but it's just for the example. So if we want to have a transition, for example, if I want to click a button and perform a fade in, naturally what we can do is to create an animation and apply that animation to the model is open state, to this class here. And to do that, we can easily create a keyframe and define the initial state as opacity 0, since the initial state of the model is hidden, and define the final state, the 2, as opacity 1, and apply this keyframe as an animation to our class. And this will work fine, okay? When the model opens, it will go from display none to display block, and it will take 300 milliseconds, and we are going to see a smooth transition. And if we want to do the same, apply the same principle to hide the model, it will be natural for any front-end developer to think, okay, so now I create a new animation, a new transition by creating a new keyframe, and say, now you go from opacity 1 to opacity 0. And I'm going to apply that animation to the model, and this should work. But it's not, it doesn't work this way. The reason, unfortunate, but the reason is quite simple, because if we have a display none property, the browser is not going to wait for an animation to hide the elements. The display none will be triggered right away when we hide the model. In this case, it's not going to wait for anything. It will be triggered. So we cannot use this technique. We cannot use this technique just like this to trigger a soft hidden to the model. So the trick here, what we can do now is, when we in the same place that we have the opacity 1 in our keyframe on the from attribute, we define it as display block, and we do the same as display none for the 2 attributes. So what we are doing now is, okay, browser, you are going to be display none, but wait for the animation to end, and then you can set yourself as display none. So if you do this, in that second, you will start seeing a smooth transition or a fade out transition, in this case on our being applied to our model. So this is the trick that was not possible until a couple of months ago. It wasn't possible, but now it is, and it's quite simple. So naturally now this is just as you are going to see in the next examples that I'm going to give you, this is a very basic example, and you can apply some similar principles to other types of animations, like fade in while going down on the screen, and fade out and going down on the screen from top to bottom. If you want, you can start playing around with keyframes, and it's going to be fine. So the second, and this is a lifesaver for me. So the second one is animating the property height when we have the auto value assigned. So it wasn't possible to do this, but now it is. The only way we could use this height auto property is using JavaScript. But now, luckily, we cannot do. We don't need to use JavaScript for this anymore. So let's say that we have an accordion with a very simple CSS assigned, and the default state of the content of the accordion is 8 auto, because we don't want to show contents, just the title, and we want to click the title and show the contents. So we are going to say that when the accordion is on state show, we want height auto, because we don't always know the size of the contents that is going to be displayed inside that accordion. Okay, it can be a text with 10 lines, or it can be a text with 100 lines. We don't know it. So now, if we do this, this is not going to work if we want to apply a smooth transition. Okay, so instead of using this height auto, what we can do is use the new calc size property. Okay, most of you probably heard about the property calc, and now we can use the calc size property with the value auto. Okay, and this will allow us to add a smooth transition from height 0 to height auto. Okay, we can, for example, show the content not in the blink of an eye being visible, but with like an accordion, like going down during 1 second and stop. Okay, so this is something that now we can do if we use this technique called calc size with the out value. But be aware, okay, that most of modern all the modern browsers already support this. But if you want to do this in ancient browsers, probably it's not going to work. But luckily, browsers are, as I said in the beginning, they are being very aware of these kind of things, and they are being quick to implement this on themselves. So the third thing that I want to share with you, I believe this thing is probably most of you already heard. It's like 1 year old, something like that. It was introduced about a year ago, something like that, which is if we have, for example, this block of code where we have three elements: main, content, and text. And if we want to change the main element while looking at the content, if we want to do that, we cannot look up on CSS. We can only look for siblings or down. Okay, if I'm here in this selector, I can change the text selector, not the parent selector. Okay, so if I try to do content main and change the color of the text to black, this is not valid CSS. It's not going to work. But luckily, we have a pseudo element called has that will allow us to change a parent element, okay, based on a direct child element. All right. So if what I'm saying here is, if the main element has inside of it the first element is a content, okay, I want the main, this container here, to have color black. So actually what I'm doing is looking at this content and saying that its parent, the main one, it's going to change something. And this is going to work. So be aware, just well, again, I invite you to explore a little bit this pseudo element. It's quite useful, but be aware that something that you cannot do is to nest multiple pseudo elements, has pseudo elements inside another has pseudo elements. Okay, this you cannot do. All right, but you can do other things. You can nest classes inside the has pseudo elements, and you can select more things than just a class here. So explore this a little bit. At least my goal here is for you to know that this is possible. And now start exploring. Okay? So to wrap up things, let's talk about CSS nesting. And CSS nesting, until a couple of months ago, it wasn't supported by the browsers. If we want to have CSS nesting, we needed to use CSS preprocessors like less or SAS, all right? And basically, this is regular CSS. We have an anchor here, the state over, and we have an anchor tag with a class inside of it, inside an element. So, and that's fine, okay? But the problem is when we start having a more complex CSS with states inside classes and pseudo elements and more states and more classes and more states and more classes. And the CSS starts to be a little messy. So by nesting classes and elements and states and whatever, it will help organize the code, and it's going to be clear to read, okay? So this is an example of nested CSS. So doing by looking at the left and looking at the right, we have here the anchor tag element with color black, which on regular CSS is represented here from line 1 to 3. And then we have two new things. We can now define that inside the anchor tag, we will define the over state, and we can define that inside or as a child element, we'll have the icon element. Okay, so if we want to represent like a sibling class or a sibling or define a pseudo element for the anchor tag, we should use this commercial E. I don't know if this is the right definition, but we should use this character here. So by doing so, we are saying that the hover pseudo element is a sibling of the anchor tag element. Okay, so if I don't want to define an element like this, if I want to define an element like a child element, I simply write down my class or whatever, and the result is going to be this. Okay, and this is also pretty useful. I mean, I sincerely hope that the CSS starts working more with this kind of updates, so we don't need to install a preprocessor or run other tools to help us, like creating functions or create blocks of code that I want to reuse in other places on my CSS. And these are features that typically exist in CSS preprocessors. Okay, so I think this is a good CSS is going on the right direction. I believe so, because this kind of updates, like now we can nest classes and all of that. I believe this means that CSS is going on the right direction, and hopefully they will upgrading even more the capabilities of CSS and side by side with the browsers, because browsers are the main responsible for someone to adopt something new, because they will render. So basically, I think these kind of features improved a lot my CSS development. I think the goal is again using less JavaScript, less CSS processes, and use CSS just as it is to do almost everything. Obviously, I'm not going to do backend just using CSS. Okay, CSS is not a programming language, but to present things, to add animations and all of that, to put things prettier, I think CSS should be something that works by itself. Okay, so these are some cool tips, I believe. So dig a little deeper. All right, explore these techniques. Try to basically improve your knowledge. Okay, you have a lot of good tools online, like for example Daily Dev. I believe you already heard of Daily Dev. It's very 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 useful, and they are always on top of new things, and you have their good articles. You have Medium, you have Hacker Tab if you are more on the dark side of UI front, and you have things more strange there, but also explore it and improve your knowledge. I think this is the goal for this masterclass. Kelly.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, that's it for the masterclass. Thanks, Pedro, for the great insights that
My
you
pleasure.
gave to the ones at home that are watching us, and for the ones at home that stood by till the end. Thank you all. We appreciate your time and dedication and support to these masterclass events. And yeah, be sure to check Pedro's article. As I said in the beginning, it will be really, really useful for you that is watching this, and it's useful because you will have a full guide about the presentation and a more detailed, in a more detailed way. And with that said, see you on next month's masterclass. We are getting it ready for you for September. And thanks, Pedro, for another amazing masterclass. Thanks for the ones at home, and see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye bye. Take
Bye.
care.